Today's episode of the WAC Podcast is brought to you by Hercules Tires, the official tire of the Western Athletic Conference. Now here are your hosts, Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil.
Welcome back to the WAC Podcast. Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil. We are now joined by Mario Moccia, the Director of Athletics at New Mexico State University. Mario, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Eric and Rachel. Thanks for having me, and hope you guys aren't dealing with too much snow up there in Denver, Colorado.
You know, it's September. Rachel's lived here all her life. I've lived here most of my life. I don't remember it snowing this early. They say it has, but, you know, we have to deal with it. We live in Colorado, so we know it's part of the deal. But hopefully things are well in Las Cruces, Mario. We have to ask this as we start every conversation, as we talk to people around the league. How are things in Las Cruces? How are things on campus? What kind of precautions are being taken? Do you have all the students, are they back doing normal things, or how is it there?
Sure. Well, you know, I thought you were going to ask me about the weather. It's in the 50s here, so that means people are running to Walmart for batteries and bottled water. You know, we're not used to that kind of temperature drop out here. But no, things are going well. You know, New Mexico State University, like other universities, decided to do a hybrid model with on-campus learning. So, you know, we have in classroom, we have online options available. And right now it seems to be going fairly well. You know, from a student athlete standpoint, obviously, you know, not only our WAC sports, but our football program is postponed. We hope to play in the spring. And, you know, we have started to test our student athletes, a quarter of them, 25% each week. So, you know, we tested on August 26th. We had 53 total tests. We had 52 negatives, 1 positive. On September 4th, we did another round, I think 57. I believe we had 56 negatives, 1 positive. So when you do the math, we're under that 2%. So we feel pretty good about things. From a COVID-19 testing standpoint, we know that we'll need to get those results in quicker as competition gets a little closer. But, you know, right now all the coaches and the student athletes are kind of itching to find out, you know, what competition is going to look like in the spring. And they're very, you know, they're all kind of raring to go. So, you know, we're trying to be as cautious as we can. But at the same time, I think our student athletes are pretty fired up to get started.
How are the student athletes handling all the testing procedures?
You know, fairly well. I mean, we just had a discussion with some of the coaches. You know, nobody loves to have that swab jammed up their schnozola. I mean, I didn't enjoy it. And after the guy said, man, you know, your nasal cavity is kind of curved. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make me feel any better, buddy. I mean, I think you stimulated some memories from like 2nd grade for me. You put it up there so far. But the reality is, you know, it just has to be done. We have a testing lab that's going to be coming online on campus, so that should help. And I know that they're talking about, you know, having less invasive testing as well, whether that's saliva or maybe, you know, not in your brain pan and just in your nostril. So, you know, we're anxiously awaiting some less invasive, quicker testing procedures. And they seem to be on the horizon, you know, with following the national landscape. So hopefully that'll get to Las Cruces pretty soon as well.
Mario, a story came out recently that the NCAA was looking at November 25th as a potential start date for basketball. Week of Thanksgiving pushes it back a couple of weeks. What does that mean for you and Coach Jans, Coach Atkinson, in terms of trying to get a schedule together for the upcoming season?
Well, you know, scheduling is hard in Las Cruces at New Mexico State anyway. I mean, we know that we're geographically challenged. That's one big thing. We also know on the men's side, we've got the nation's longest winning streak. That doesn't help either. People aren't, you know, tripping over themselves to get over here to play in the Pan American Center. But I know that the coaching staff and Coach Jans are, you know, working to create that men's schedule. I think the women's schedule is very, very far along. So, you know, one of the things that we have to focus on, much like everybody else, is our bye games. You know, we play 2 of those a year. That certainly helps with the overall budget. And it helps for some things specifically for men's basketball. We know those monies will probably be a little less this year, but we're still trying to see what's out there. The other thing that's kind of unique to New Mexico State is, we have 2 games every year with UTEP and 2 games every year with UNM. And those are our huge rivalry games. And typically those are at the beginning of the season. So if there's a pushback from November 10th to November 25th, we'll certainly have to alter those games. But we're kind of hell-bent on making sure we play those 4 games because our fans, as much as they look forward to the WAC and the ability to win a WAC championship, boy, those are games for bragging rights for the state and the region. So those are critically important as well. So we're anxiously awaiting to see what the start date is. And then, we'll look forward to those games first and foremost. And then, hopefully we'll still be able to play that kind of made for TV game against UNI up in South Dakota, Northern Iowa. Will be a great game with a top tier Missouri Valley Conference team.
Things are changing every single day, even every hour. Are there a chance that fans could be in the stands at New Mexico State?
Yeah, our state has been very conservative from a fan standpoint, from a mask wearing standpoint, from a community standpoint. If we were to play a game right now, in September, I don't think we'd be looking at having fans in the stands. We have a professional soccer team in Albuquerque, and I know they're getting ready for a home match, so I'm anxiously waiting to see what they do, but I know it's being advised that they don't have fans. Certainly in late November, I hope that changes. While we have a really good fan base, I think the one thing that's beneficial is that the Pan American Center holds 12,600, seats. So we would be able to socially distance people. Just depends if our fans who are paying top dollar are going to want to be socially distanced away from the court, or will they just be happy to be in the building? So, those things we're monitoring. They change on a regular basis, but that's why I'm okay with a little bit later start time, because I think that gives us a better chance to have more fans in the stands.
We're talking with Mario Moccia, the Director of Athletics at New Mexico State University. Mario, a story came out recently that the ACC basketball coaches are floating the idea of a 346-team NCAA tournament. Obviously, Rachel and I have been talking about this for 6 months. Kind of everything's been put on the table over the last 6 months between bubbles and different ideas. Any thoughts on this possibility of having every single team in the tournament this year?
Well, I've obviously seen those reports, in speaking. We just had our WAC administrators meeting. We have a member of our group who's on the council. She indicated that wasn't really brought up. That seems to be a one league driven thing. And then there's a lot of people chiming in on that. Gee whiz, the money is so tight these days. I don't know what format they're talking it would look like, but for the NCAA to spring for that seems to be a little unrealistic at the time. Also, teams that are looking to save money, I don't know if, the teams that are 300 to 355 on the RPI are interested in, I think it sounds great. Hey, we'll all be in the tournament, but there's costs associated with those individual schools as well as the NCAA as an organization. And with the NCAA having furloughs and things like that, I just don't see how it works from a financial standpoint. But just like anything else in the time of COVID-19, everybody's putting everything on the table for discussion. But if you're asking me personally, I don't see how it works. I kind of am a little bit of a traditionalist, and we'll, just like you guys, we'll see what happens.
2020 has brought the passing of former men's basketball coach Lou Henson. What did he mean to the Aggies athletic department?
Yeah, an iconic figure, and a lot of people know him as the Aggie head coach, but, he is unbelievably well known in the city and in the state. I've been saying this when I go around and speak and talk to groups. I mean, name me 10 more influential, kind, well-known individuals in the history of our state since 1912, and Lou Henson's got to be in your top 10. He started coaching at Las Cruces High School, won several state championships. Then he was the head coach at Hardin-Simmons. And a lot of people don't realize that as a point of him taking the job, he insisted that the basketball team be desegregated. He was big on that. He also brought in the first Hispanic coach in the history of the program. And then he came here and put us on the map in short order, Final Four appearance in 1970 and a lot of other NCAA appearances, then goes to Illinois and takes the Flying Illini to the Final Four. So while he's in the College Basketball Hall of Fame, there's a push to get him in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. I know that those efforts are ongoing with us and with Illinois. We've been in contact with them. That's the basketball piece. The human piece is there is not a more well-respected, nice, kind individual. I got to know Lou. When I accepted the job, I was the athletic director at Southern Illinois University, and we had a legendary baseball coach, went to many College World Series, Richard Itchy Jones, and then he went up to Illinois, and he was really good friends with Lou. So Lou and I talked before I ever got to Las Cruces. And, just a quick story, I pull in on a Saturday night, January the 3rd, snuck into an Aggie basketball game. We beat Cal Irvine on a last-second shot, and Sunday I was over at Coach's house. Well, when my family moved in, the kids were much smaller, and Mary, his wife, insisted that we do not live in student housing, that we live in their house. So Lou, I had to register our oldest for school, and Lou and the neighbor said, well, you've got to have a formal agreement. So as we were signing this, he goes, well, Lou, you have to charge him for something. And he says, okay, well, I'll charge him $1. And I looked at Coach. I said, well, Coach, we haven't had a chance to negotiate this. And he just said, Mario, sign the paper right here. But the reality is when we got in trouble in the mid-90s, it was Coach Henson that came back to coach us for $1 because he knew how much we were hurting. And he took that team in short order to an NCAA tournament. So Lou means more or less everything to our athletic program. He's the architect of the single greatest moment in the history of our sports programs. But what he means to the university and the state is also immeasurable. And it was great that we could have the 1970 Final Four reunion last year. And while Coach was unable to travel, he was able to communicate with the guys. He sent a video message, and he was able to see the games and all the video feedback from his players to him. So I'm just very thankful that we were able to do that while Coach was alive.
Yeah, the 50-year anniversary of that Final Four team, and definitely Coach Henson deserves to be in the Naismith Hall of Fame, so hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. One of the stories, we had Russ Bradford on after the passing of Coach Henson, who of course served on his staff, and he had a great story about how Coach Henson helped pick up trash after games. Did you see some of that kind of thing too?
Yeah, Coach, the funny thing is, here's your iconic coach, and he would just come around, would go to lunch. He'd play bridge. He would, he was just the most, the word's escaping me, but to have the success he had and to have as low key of a profile when he'd come to games was just staggering. And same way with his wife, Mary, the first lady of Aggie basketball forever, just very kind, nice human being. So I look forward for Mary to get back here. They split a home in Las Cruces as well as Champaign. So we hope she can come back here soon, but we've been in regular contact with her. And yeah, the stories that came out from Coach Henson's life, whether it's here or Illinois, are pretty much legendary, especially the ones with Bobby Knight.
Last time we had you on WAC All Access, you were sporting a Pascal Siakam jersey. Have you been able to watch the NBA playoffs this year?
Yeah, I certainly watch when, when you have a student athlete, in the NBA, or Nick Gonzalez, with Major League Baseball, or, Jason Huntley, he was released by the Lions, picked up immediately by the Eagles. You certainly watch, but, all of Las Cruces is unbelievably proud of Pascal, what he's been able to do, and hopefully he'll be able to put the team on his back and take them as far as they went last year.
Yeah, Pascal has had a tremendous season. He's an all-star this year, NBA champion last year. Did you see this coming when you were watching him play, that he was going to be this kind of a star in the NBA?
Well, I don't think anybody would forecast it. And truth be told, when he declared, I thought, boy, Pascal's got a shot, but I really thought one more year would have done him well. So that shows you how much the athletic director knows. But I will tell you this, we were playing UTEP his sophomore year, and there was a sequence where he had a block shot, and then he had a thunderous dunk on the other end, and the ball came back to our end, and the next possession, he pulled up for a three, which he didn't do a whole lot of, and his release was phenomenal. I mean, the rotation, and it caught nothing but net, and I was like, okay, I've seen this before. And you know what it actually reminded me? When I was working for the Lobos way back when, and I saw Keith Van Horn, and he just had that thing where he had a half court, alley-oop dunk, and then he hit a 3-pointer with Kenny Thomas right in his face. And you're like, wow, that guy's a star. So it really gave me the deja vu. And, sometimes when you see somebody, you're like, wow, that's higher level stuff that they're doing on the court right now. And that was my Pascal can make it in the NBA moment.
Well, keeping it in professional sports, Nick Gonzalez was the 7th overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft by the Pittsburgh Pirates. You're a former student athlete at New Mexico State, played baseball there, so I know you're a big baseball guy. Kind of along the same lines as Pascal, did you see this coming with Nick Gonzalez, that he would be the highest ever draft pick in New Mexico State history?
I didn't see the first round draft pick at all. I will tell you, though, whether it's Daniel Johnson, who made his major league debut with the Indians. So we've had, some really good players come through. Nick obviously was at a different level. And when he went to the Cape Cod League and was the MVP, it kind of blew up. And an interesting story is before the Cape Cod League, I got a call from Elliot Avent, who was my coach at New Mexico State, who was the NC State head coach. And he was also Team USA's coach. And he said, hey, we're doing our roster. What do you think about Nick Gonzalez? Can he play? Should we take him? And I'm like, well, he's great here. I mean, I don't know what your personnel is, but I'd give him my ringing endorsement. Well, they didn't take him. He goes to the Cape Cod League. He's the MVP. And then Avent calls me back and says, well, why didn't you be more forceful with me taking him? So, and then he came back and he just blew up. One of my old Little League buddies is a bigwig with the Marlins. And he flew in from the San Francisco area. And he says, hey, man, he goes, everybody's talking about this kid. And he goes, we have the 3rd overall pick. I don't think it would take him that high, but that just shows you how high of consideration he was. And for him to be picked 7th overall is tremendous for the program. And, we're very excited. And it seems like, he could elevate to the big leagues, maybe even this year. I'd love to see him get some at-bats. I don't think, you always don't want to throw somebody in over their head, but knowing Nick, even if he doesn't have great success, it's not going to rattle his confidence. So I'd love to see him get a shot at the end of the year.
Well, Mario, you're a star all on your own, and now you're doing a weekly podcast with Adam Young over at New Mexico State. How much have you enjoyed doing this podcast?
Well, I tell you one thing. During the time of COVID, when there's a million questions and, we don't have competition, I thought it was critical to really solicit any and all questions from our fan base, whether they're whimsical, whether they're serious, whether they're kind of out in left field. I think it was important just to, because you don't have that regular connection when we're at home and things like that. So just soliciting questions, whether it's via Facebook or Twitter or, what have you. I think it's been great to be able to connect with the fans. And as you guys know, Adam Young does great work. He's doing a coach's corner with Chris Jans. He interviews all of our student athletes. So our philosophy was, hey, let's just flood everybody with as much media stuff on our student athletes and departmental stuff as we can until we get on the field, and let's throw our energies into that. So I've been very pleased with all the work that Adam has done.
Yeah, when we first started our podcast, first phone call I made was to Adam and picked his brain about exactly how he was doing all these podcasts. Call him the podfather of the Western Athletic Conference at this point. With he got 4 or 5 podcasts going now?
Yeah, no, he, Adam works for us in the department a little bit. He also works for our multimedia rights holder, Learfield. So yeah, he's probably the busiest guy during the pandemic, at least at New Mexico State. So yeah, he's doing he's doing a lot of different things. And while nothing can replicate, competition and seeing everybody on a regular basis, we're trying to fill the void as best as we can.
You mentioned fans sending in questions. What's been the funniest question that you've got?
I tell you what, this last podcast, they're like, hey, is Chris Jans your best coaching hire? And I'm like, well, come on, man, I can't answer that. I mean, I've hired 11 or 15 head coaches, in my tenure. Maybe it's more, maybe it's 20. And I said, and Chris Jans is listening to this, so there's no way I'm going to automatically put him at number one. But I said, yeah, he's probably number one. So yeah, you get all different kind of questions. So it's good. We've even, as much as Adam doesn't love going on our fan chat board, I found myself with a little time. I think it's interesting just to see what I know that might be a little bit of a fringe, but we've tried to solicit questions from there as well. So we might get a little more off the wall from there, but we've been trying to use every stream we can to solicit any questions that the Aggie faithful will have.
Talking with Mario Moccia from New Mexico State. You mentioned earlier, Mario, you have football, Division I FBS level. We have two other schools in the WAC in Dixie and Tarleton with football now as well. You mentioned possibly playing in the spring as a Division I independent. What is that looking like? Obviously, Pac-12 has mentioned they might start a little bit earlier or start before the spring. Imagine you have to monitor all kinds of different things with football this year.
Yeah, that's been its own animal. We had a lot of issues. Obviously, you had the COVID and the testing issue. We certainly had the scheduling issue as an independent. We got to the point where we were down to only 4 games, but we still could have, built up a schedule and competed. I think the big thing was, the state of New Mexico had a travel ban or travel quarantine for 14 days. And that really, in effect, shut everything down for us, the possibility of playing in the fall. We were really hopeful that we would kind of lock arms with New Mexico. And once the Mountain West, and make a pitch to the governor or the state of New Mexico to see if there was some kind of exemption. But once the Mountain West postponed their fall, that kind of sunk us. So now we turn to the spring. I have a hard time thinking we're going to play 8, 10, 12 games in the spring and then turn around and play, late August, early September and start the fall football season. That just doesn't seem like from a health and safety standpoint to the student athlete that's the right thing to do. I've talked to our head coach, Doug Martin, about maybe doing like a 4 or 6 game spring. That certainly allows our student athletes to compete. We know that they'll all retain their eligibility. I think it gives you, it gives the coaching staff a great opportunity to take a good look at players from a personnel standpoint. You can sell some tickets, hopefully have the band out there. So right now, I have talked to Tarleton, I've talked to Dixie, we've talked to UMass, we've talked to UConn. We don't know what the NCAA is going to say from a time parameter standpoint, but I would anticipate the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the MAC, and the Mountain West playing a conference-only schedule. But at the same time, I don't know that. I'm sure New Mexico would love to play us just because that generates many more fans for them than playing like a San Jose or a Hawaii. Same with UTEP. I mean, obviously they're playing in the fall, but if they get some games canceled, is there a possibility of spring? So there's a million different questions, but for us, we're targeting playing some games in the spring. We're just waiting for some more information from the NCAA from a time parameter standpoint, and then we'll look to set our schedule.
Mario, I know you just had a birthday. Happy late birthday, and you decided to do a food drive to celebrate. What was the idea behind that?
You know what? Like I said, our marketing, we work very closely with this organization called the Aggie Cupboard. So a lot of people don't know, a lot of people think food pantries are, for the community members, things like that. There's a lot of needy students as well. So there is a food pantry on campus called the Aggie Cupboard, and we've done things around men's basketball games and other Olympic sports to, bring a canned food and we get it to them. So our marketing department, Nicole Sachs said, hey, let's do this. We'll get some eyeballs. And I can't tell you how many, it was really just for the staff. So they're driving by in cars and dropping off food, and I'm over there, in my throne, which was really just a regular chair, waving to the masses. And I had so many community members. Why didn't you tell me you were doing this? We would have dropped off food. So we'll have to spread it out. But I thought it was a nice thing but I give all the credit to our marketing department, and they generated these 2 huge bins of food for the Aggie cupboard. So that was a really, I think, a nice win-win.
Well, Mario, happy belated birthday, and thank you for taking some time out and joining us on the WAC Podcast.
Yeah, and I know Rachel thinks that I took some of that Nutella and peanut butter, but I did not. Okay, I did not take. They even said you could take one food item. I thought that would be bad karma. So every bit went to the Aggie cupboard, Rachel, because I know this is like 60 minutes. You're going to put me on the spot.
Good to know, Mario.
Thanks.
Keep that in mind.
Coming up next, we're going to have Rachel's conversation with Milan Aqua as he gets ready for the NBA draft. You're listening to the WAC Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the WAC Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And check out our website at wacsports.com.